Bill and I often talk about ancestors, especially with regard to compassion practices. There hasn't been a lot of talk about ancestors in the meditation practice here in the West. Mostly we're concerned with present-day affairs. Ancestors are those who came before us. You are the outgrowth of them. And from that view, we have been shaped by our elders and our elders' elders, and so on. Our ancestors worked hard, loved hard, and wanted a better future for us, didn't they? These days, I think a lot about being a good ancestor, of living life forward, living with the consideration of what is left in the wake of Susan and what is already passed. Some years ago, there was a Mormon temple that was built not far from Boston, and Bill and I went on the public tour before the temple was consecrated. And in that temple, there was the most amazing room I had ever seen. It's completely covered in mirrors, every wall, ceiling as well. And so the whole group of us walked in, and there was a repeating reflection of Susan, forward and back into infinity. A repeating image of Bill, forward and back. And everyone who was in the room, it was amazing to see. Amazing. And, you know, I was struck by the brilliance of that, but then when the tour guide told us what the room was for, it blew my mind. When couples are married, they go into that room with both sides of the family, and they stand. And they stand and see these reflections forward and back, and are told that we are now linked forever in eternity. That's what this means. That is radical interconnectedness. Radical interconnectedness. And it's difficult, it's true, but it's difficult for us to wrap our minds around that, the expanse of that. But the visual display of that, which I had never seen, I thought was utterly brilliant. That sensibility of interconnectedness also creates the possibility for intergenerational healing, as well as our own. We have only to be brave enough to hold the truth of our inherited joys and burdens, and caringly consider those born in our wake. When I was a child, I periodically asked my parents to tell me stories about what it was like for them growing up, about my grandparents and my great-grandparents. They didn't have much to offer by way of story. Maybe a moment in time, maybe where they were from, maybe a sense of character or their profession. But the primary focus of my parents seemed to be more on making a better future than looking back at the past. But how can we, if we don't stop and take stock of where we are and make use of that information? One of the few times we are routinely asked to reflect on our ancestors is when we meet with a medical doctor. It's pragmatic. Family medical history helps discern possible genetic diseases and treatments. And when we lack that information, which many people do, it can make assessing the problem a bit harder. We carry forward what our ancestors carried in our genes, in our biology, in how we're relating and reacting to the world, knowingly and unknowingly. The Iroquois people use a 7-generation stewardship that urges the current generation of humans to live and work for the benefit of 7 generations into the future. That's about 140 years, they say. and decide whether the decisions that we make today would be of benefit to the children 7 generations from now. So goes the expression, in every deliberation we must consider the impact on the 7th generation. And what I appreciate about this view is the sensibility of stewardship. We are here only for a short time, 70 or 80 years these days, if we're lucky. Everything is fleeting. Everything is borrowed. Nothing is really ours. We can't take it with us when we go, but we can absolutely consider what we leave as our legacy. This is being a good ancestor. What will we leave in our wake, for the better and for the worse? Let's be careful. And what can we heal for our ancestors now by how we live this moment? This, I think, is what contributes to intergenerational healing. And it is a kindness and a great act of compassion to consider our interconnectedness, telescoping through time, and make use of our moment in the sun right now. What if we imagine stewarding our life, being a good ancestor to the living and to the yet unborn future generations? How might that inform how we relate to the present moment? And what if we imagine stewarding our life, reflecting back on previous generations' lives, the life-affirming habits and the destructive ones? And how might this information inform how we relate to the present moment? This is what mindfulness meditation practice invites us to consider. The implications of our actions. Past actions condition, set the stage for future actions. They create our future, the future. So how we live in the present matters greatly for healing the past and for bettering the future. Let's move beyond our ancestors' mistakes and build on what is life-affirming. Let's listen to our youth and consider carefully the choices that we make today. Let's move in the direction of less suffering and more ease of well-being for you, for me, for all of us who belong to the race we call humans. Let's practice being better human beings and good ancestors. It's for our collective welfare. This is the gift we leave in the world. Thank you for your kind attention.